This video is going to show you Grandmaster Nightfall getting platinum rank on the weekly featured Nightfall this week, which is the Disgraced on a Hunter, using an ARC 3.0 setup that's a little bit different. It's not the punch dodge, which is the quickest way to run this. I'm sure you saw the runs. I didn't want to sort of replicate those runs because we've already seen what they do. It's pretty straightforward. You punch dodge, you know. So we pretty much know how that goes, right? But what I wanted to do is how good is Raiden Flux in this? Because as you know, I'm a big fan of Raiden Flux with the ARCSTAFF. I do know Gathering Storm is the better super overall, probably, because it's ranged and it's, you know, any ranged super is generally better than the close quarter ones. In general, that's a general rule of thumb anyways in Grandmasters because of melee based damage you take and stuff. So yeah, the run piqued my interest, and remember, if the loadout and the run doesn't pique my interest, there's no video. So this piqued my interest, so that's why I wanted to sort of, for the hunter, I was looking for hunters, right? So as you can see, as I say, Raiden Flux, ARCSTAFF, weapon wise, Wish Ender, Ogma pulse rifle with unstartable, and then the Pitchglass linear fusion. Quick reasoning for each weapon, for the choice of each weapon. Well, Wish Ender because it one-shots barrier shields and it's infinite ammo, and you get more heavy ammo when you have an exotic primary on. So that was the reason for that. One-shot and barriers is good in this. For the pulse rifle, very good at taking down the boss shield, because there's a solar shield that's constantly needs to be taken down, right? So a good solar primary was in order, and I may as well just use a pulse, even though you probably don't need one, right? I just went with the pulse anyways, right? Because there is a couple of unstops at the end, and it would be a little bit annoying not being able to stop them on this build. On a Titan, it wouldn't matter, right? On a Warlock, it wouldn't matter if you're running like Voidwalker, Conqueror Souls, Weaver Horde, and stuff like that. It wouldn't matter too much, but on this build, I wanted to have something to do with champs, so that's why I've got Ogma on. And Pitchglass because it's a precision frame linear. It is not a burst frame one, the aggressive frames. So if you want to use Storm Chase in this, you can. I find sometimes I prefer to use Storm Chaser, sometimes I prefer to use Pitchglass. It's really up to you, right? I think the way this boss is, with the crit spot, a small crit spot, I just think the precision frame is a little bit better in this one. The barriers teleported on top of us. That's fine. We're going to use our super. So you can see now, providing, I mean, you don't need to have the exact combos correct, but you do enough stun damage, right, to the champ to stop them from putting a barrier up. This extends the barrier. This extends time between when a barrier wants to put a barrier up, a barrier shield, because of stun damage that this super does, because it staggers them, especially when you do the correct combo, which I'll tell you what the combo is. The highest damage combo on this super is light, well, it's dodge, light, heavy, because you get lethal current and then you get synapse junctions with the exotic chest plate Raiden Flux. That all stacks together. You could top it off with a tractor cannon if you wanted. That would just mean you don't have a heavy weapon, bear in mind, but you could technically just weigh out your super for every champ, for every double champs there are. Yeah, obviously you don't need to do that. I've got Wish Ender, but I'm just stating, like, if double champs have been a problem to you, because I know that that's the main thing to people, they die when they're trying to deal with the double barriers, because there's a ton of times when there's double barriers up, especially the high ones. So, like, you can just farm super energy off them, then pop super, and then you can kill both barriers with one super, which you'll see coming up. So, as I said, you don't need to do what I'm saying, but it's for people who are on the lower end of skill level who aren't used to doing these, but they still want loot. So how do they go about doing that? Well, as I said, this is a setup that they can use, and it doesn't require exact positioning with shotguns and getting you know, your melee dodge right, because you do need good movement for that stuff. It is easier with the punch dodge Assassin's Cowl, but you do need to know what you're doing and add spawns and everything, and keeping buff up time correct, combination blow and stuff like that. And where do you use it on the boss? Do you not use it on the boss? Knowing when to go in and to get out of there and stuff like that. You need to know a lot. This runs just as you see it, right? It's just a case of this is how you would safely complete it on any setup that you're running. Right? It doesn't have to be a punch dodge setup. So we're just using the Ogma to get these wizards, solar wizards down. We've got turnabout on our pulse, which is a very good perk this for solar shields. And obviously the boss has a solar shield, but just to let you know, the boss's shield is now bugged this season. It wasn't in previous seasons, but it is this. So, for example, I don't think adaptive munitions works on it. Now, I haven't tried that, but I'm going to assume that it wouldn't. And charge of light mods like shield break charge, stuff like that ain't going to work on the boss's shield. At least I think so with the adaptive munitions. Let me know. I haven't even tried adaptive on. But I would assume it doesn't because the shield is bugged. Even though it's classed as a shield, as any other shield in the game. Just that it's the boss's shield. So with this section here, you really can just take it at your own pace. Just bear in mind, when you get to the point where there's 2 arc melee based knights with a bunch of thrall, that's when the shriekers will open up. Once that phase of enemies is taken out, you want to focus on the right or left one, whichever, because as I said in my previous video, when the shriekers, they first initially open up, they're not shooting at you. You've got a good 5 seconds to sort of do some damage to them. Then after that, they'll hone on your target, on where you are, and try to kill you. But obviously, if you're back in this safe house area, right, they can't really hit you so much from here. So we'll just use Wish Ender to take down the shriekers. Now it's the barriers. So I've got bow loader on as well. So from the previous video, I didn't use bow loader on the Titan, and I found with bow loader, it's a little bit better to use Wish Ender in terms of getting your bow shot to one-shot the shield, because it will body shot one-shot or crit, right? So it's not a case of crit versus body, because it body shots one-shot shields as well. Even if you're like 80 power under, which I've tested like on other activities, if you're 80 levels under, you still one-shot barrier shield. So obviously in a GM, you're going to one-shot a shield because you're only 25 under. It's a case of timing on the bow. Now, when the arrow is fully knocked, there'll be a ting. That ting, to me at least, is to say that's an audio cue to say that the bow is fully drawn, ready to go. And once you unload the arrow after that ting or slightly after, you'll definitely one-shot the shield. If you do it slightly too soon, which sometimes I do because I'm used to the fire, I'm used to a quicker fire rate of bow, to be honest. Obviously, none of us were using Wish Ender until this season. So you've got to get used to its draw time. Once you do, though, as I say, it does massive damage. Like, you can literally just have it out the entire time to melt a champ down. I would recommend, though, don't mess about with these 2 barriers on the boxes because they can fall off map. He just did. It's a case of stun damage. Try not to do too much heavy. The nades can knock them off. If you really don't want to knock them off the box, take them slow with the bow, because the bow will do less stagger damage. And what I mean by that is the damage where the champ gets knocked off the box. That's literally like knocking them back, right? Whereas the bow just won't, and it'll regain their footing every time they break their shield. They'll regain their footing. So this is the double barrier arc knight. We're going to pop super. We've saved it for this, so you can see how just excellent it is at dealing with barriers, right? This build's all about that. I'm going to speed up the footage from here because literally now this next section's very simple. It's just 2 barriers, a couple of melee wretches. Just obviously keep your distance from those. What you can do if you want is when you've stunned one of the barriers, start killing some of the wretches if you want, if you're not confident. But if you stand far back enough, they won't push too far. Something to keep an eye on. Notice super energy though. We just used it. We have it back. So that's intentional to the run. Make sure that you do that. Don't melt down those 2 barriers too fast, because you'll be penalised if you do, because the next section you won't have your super. And I think it's beneficial that you do have a super on this setup, for the next bit. We've got an elemental well there. Someone else generated the elemental well, so that's a foreign elemental well, meaning that our solo is now no longer a solo GM. Someone else is well, so it is what it is. But I'm going to pick it up. So we'll stun the boss's shield, and we're waiting for the enemies. Focus the enemies, not the boss. Forget about the boss at this minute in time. What you want to do is try and get as many Thrall and Cursed killed as possible. Because you want to isolate all that stuff. You want to kill all that stuff so you can isolate the barriers. You just want you and 2 barriers. That is the setup here. Come back a little bit because the barriers start to push up. The boss will have pushed back, retreated. It's these 2 Cursed that I'm worrying about because I don't know if I can tank them in a super. I probably could. It's just how much, I'm not sure really. But I'm going to wait for full HP. Always do that when you pop in a super like this in a GM. And then we're going to do our dodge and then light, heavy. R1, R1, R2, right? Whatever your buttons are on PC. Now, we've done too much damage to the second one, that's fine. We're going to wait for the shield to go away, right? And then melt. The super lasts so long that you can comfortably take 2 barriers. But as I said, don't just spam light attacks or something, or just heavy attacks. Try and do the combo, right? The R1, the light, heavy. Because as I say, it's the palm attack that does the massive damage. Now on this bit, this little section, you just want to focus the boss. Now there's 2 wizards behind the boss. I haven't mentioned as well is I'm trying to simulate a grenade build on the hunter a little bit, not in terms of like Shinobu's Vow skip grenade build, because skip grenades are rubbish, they're terrible. But to have a good passive grenade, we've got Spark of Focus on with a poor mobility stat, but it doesn't matter too much because we've got max resil, max discipline. But we're going to get lots of dodges. But why all that matters is because I've got Bomber on. And lightning strikes twice with the stat boost. So it means that you can sort of farm grenades in cover. You'll see me do this a little bit more at the boss, where it matters a bit more when you're doing your damage, because it's a nightmare to damage the boss, particularly phase 2. But you can sort of simulate. Obviously it's nowhere near Titan in terms of how much grenades you can spam, but that's why I like, as I say, Bomber. But Spark of Focus is a very good. I haven't run Spark of Resistance. Now, for most people, that's the better choice. But that's if you're getting hit a lot. If you're experienced with this GM, you'll know that you don't really need it that much. If you're doing the melee build, you do, because there's things that are going to hit you. You know, it doesn't really matter. But for this, with the Spark of Focus, it just means I can farm up my grenade behind cover, which I value that. Because I didn't obviously do a melee build. This is actually the opposite of a melee build. It's super / grenade. Because as I say, I'm trying to do more of a generalist run as opposed to a hyper-Pacific melee setup type run. This unstoppable is really easy to control. You can stop behind, like through that little gap there, which is actually interesting. Just know the unstoppable can melt you through that gap sometimes as well. We're going to, I think I end up using a bit of heavy. I should really, because I've got max heavy there. Because what you're going to realise as well is, if you're using an exotic primer like Osteo or Wishender, Outbreak Perfected, stuff like that, you'll get plenty of heavy, so use it. Use the heavy, but just make sure that you are getting the kill with your bow. It won't count if you're getting it with your energy weapon. So you'll see that sometimes, even if a champ's like one shot, I could just finish them off with the pulse. I don't. Because there's a chance of getting more heavy, so I'll switch to Wishender, finish off to get that increased buff for heavy. Because it has to be on kill with the exotic primary that you're running to get that increased heavy. Not to mention we're using double primary. It's got 2 things going on here. The double primary means more heavy as well, which you do need a little bit of heavy on the hunter, because as I say, I haven't got that immediate storm grenade damage constantly on the boss and stuff, so you do need a little bit of heavy to complement the setup. The super's going to do a good bit of chunk of damage to the boss, which you see coming up, but it can be hard on the boss because the boss is a floating target. This is the place where you take this barrier from. Very easy to do that. The reason why it's from here is because the barrier can't hit you from here. The barrier just stands idle. Means you can do all the heavy, all the bow shots you want to do. It's super simple. Whereas if you take the barrier on the hill, Cursed will push. The obviously barrier is going to hit you with them arc shots, which 2-3 shots you're dead. So even at 100 resil, so you got to be careful. We'll just take out the remainder of these Cursed because they can actually come into the room, the boss room, when you start in the boss, and they can follow you in and sneak up on you. So take out all the Cursed. This is a good angle for these two barriers. This is what I generally do. I stand here because you got the high ground and the champs can't hit you as much, and you get a good line of sight for the most part. Sometimes they'll go in awkward positions, but generally it's all right. I think I do get unlucky a little bit in a minute. Yeah, that angle right there. See how that's bad? Now, why is that bad? Well, because the barrier's going all the way right, so the barrier on the left has clean shots on me. So that was actually kind of like a little bit of a bad moment, but not that I was doing bad play. The barrier actually outplayed me. I'd like to see more things like that with the barriers and champs. Just smarter AI, you know, doing things like that. Maybe pushing up and jumping up on ledges. Like, when do you ever see a barrier knight jump and stuff? You know, they do, but it's not like they're not coded. They have so many limitations. Like, why am I able to kill this barrier on this ledge? I shouldn't be able to do that. Like, this barrier should be able to push me, jump up to where I'm standing, and confront me. But they don't. And Unstartables are very similar. They don't have any perception of corners. Right? They'll push up so far, if they don't see you, they stop pushing. You know, it's just things like that that could sort of improve champions massively. So as we start, we'll get a shield break. Now we're going to show off the super a little bit. I've hit both combos. We're doing good so far. We've hit all our combos. This isn't always the case. Missed one there, and we've done our damage. If you're going to use this setup, obviously make sure that you leave 10 to 15% super energy left so you can get out of there, because the boss is going to hit you in the back. And if you don't have that super left, you don't have the resistance. See, super resistance and standard resistance stack. So you're really tanky when you're in your super, in a Roman super. Yeah? So you've got to realize how tanky you can be in a super like this. But it's only really for Roman supers. It doesn't work like with Gavin Storm, because it's a one-shot style super. Although it's very good when you get it hit on the boss. I mean, as I say, if you want to run that super, by all means, you can run that. You can literally run the setup I did, but run the super. Maybe switch off, or obviously you would switch off Raiden Flux. Maybe put on Fortracer. I think Fortracer would be really good for this, because it's very good on barriers. Really good on the final phase, because, you know, that's if you're not doing punch dodge. If you're doing punch dodge, obviously it's Assassin's Cowl. So phase 1 damage is sped up just because there's nothing going on. Phase 1 of the damage, right, is basically just you breaking down that shield, doing a little bit of damage. The boss hides because it's got a shield, then confronts you again when that shield's regenerated. It's this constant thing of just doing that back and forth. Then this is obviously the next wave of enemies. Boss is asleep, so you don't need to worry about that. It's these acolytes now. I have a super, but I'm not going to use it, which would be a good super usage actually, because there's like 3-4 Arc Knights, couple of acolytes. But a well-placed nade is going to do me well here. This is a good nade here. See, that's why we go pulse on the Arc Hunter. Best nade choice in my opinion. Storm Grenade's still good because it's a lower cooldown rate, so you're going to get more of them, but it doesn't track. You're not going to get the same playstyle as you would on a Titan. Right, so it hasn't got that tracking capability, so they're easy to miss. Ads will run out of them, like a standard Storm. You know, like this wizard would just run out of that. It would just float out of your Storm on the Hunter. So the pulse, it lasts really long, better damage. It's the nade to choose, I think. So this is now what I'm going to label as phase 2, right? Phase 2 is when the boss is on the bridge, which I believe to be the hardest phase in the entire thing. Even though it's really just you and the boss. Because of where the boss is positioned on this awkward bridge, the boss can hit you quite hard and quite frequently. We're going to use our super here. We're missing some combos. Why is that? Well, because the boss is too high. The tracking on this super is very good, actually, for the most part. It's got really good tracking, but even this boss, because it being a floating target, is still awkward to hit. That's a downside to the runner, I guess. I wish that wasn't a thing, and the boss would just be a bit more thing with that. Wouldn't go super high in the air so that you could at least get your super off. I mean, as I said, it's still going to do some damage for you, but not as much as I would have liked. So this is where you need to take your time. Obviously, on the Titan run, you would break shield, storm, run away. Break shield, storm, run away. Maybe do a linear shot, run away, stuff like that. But on this, we're going to try to, as I say, take phase 2 damage a little bit easier. Not easier, but slower. Because there's a high... there can be a good chance that the boss catches you when you're running away or something, or round a corner. So you've got to peek shoot the boss and have unstoppable pulse procced. That'll help. That'll sort of stop the boss from spamming the arc attack. Also, if you're like sort of free peeking the boss, and the boss does the attack, but it's constantly hitting around a corner, wait for that arc attack to stop. There's actually a pattern to it. Eventually, it stops. The boss has a sort of mini thing on what to do, and then that's when you can peek, take down the shield, do a pulse. All linear if you want, but don't do too much linear. You can't stand in the same spot for a long time in this. That's what makes the lightning grenades, sorry, the storm grenades so good. Because the storm grenade will do everything for you. Whereas on this, I've got to think a little bit more about positioning, my damage and stuff. You can see I'm getting plenty of nades though. Despite me being on a hunter that's not a really good grenade build, I'm sure we know that. Still get plenty of grenades, and it's because of the lightning strikes twice, focus breathing, and bomber. Combining all those 3 things together, we're sort of doing a build without having to invest mods into like firepower and stuff like that, which I could have done, but I just went Font of Wisdom. Font of Wisdom merely Wellmaker, because I was only really interested in my super up time and stuff. So we'll break shield. Be careful of the mist. That mist will come up. When that mist comes up, you need to move out of it. Obviously, you're going to get waves of enemies for every 5%-ish damage to the boss. There's a lot of waves. Expect a lot. The boss is hitting us from all the way back there. See that? Things like that can happen. Luckily, the double arc resist has saved us, but you're not entirely safe always. It's because the boss is actually higher than usual. That's odd. That might be odd to say, but it is. It's because the boss is floating higher, and you can see further down the hill, which generally that wouldn't happen. So we've got a pulse grenade again, so we'll simulate that. Another thing as well, if you do sort of run away, the boss won't flow out of your nade as much. We're going to use a second super here with a pulse. We're getting hit quite hard, but the boss is immune. And then we'll go to the back of the map. Because there's a big hard wave here, there's obviously... I actually entirely forgot about this wave, because when you're doing it on Titan, it's easily forgettable, because it's a couple of acolytes. But this is now actually making me think I've got to play on my feet a little bit. Think on my feet a little bit, just with the acolytes, because they're pushing. So this is where you would stand, right? Obviously the unstoppable won't push because the unstop hasn't sawed us, but a bunch of acolytes will. We'll get a pulse grenade down. That'll help us out a little bit. But yeah, it's that influx of acolytes. Just be careful with them. If too many push you at once can be a bit of a problem. We'll get our well for Font of Wisdom. Get all our reloads. And now it's for the unstop. There was actually a acolyte behind me, put me off a little bit. Missed my nade. The unstoppable though, you can see this. You can deal with them really easy. Just know that once you kill this unstop, there'll be one that spawns immediately to your left, which can melt. So you need to get where that unstoppable is as soon as the unstoppable dies. That's just a key thing because there's going to be 2 ogres spawning. One unstop, one red bar. The unstoppable's backing up, which is interesting. I haven't seen this before. So we'll push up then and get the stun. Try to sort of keep a couple of heavy bricks. Any bricks you get up top, don't pick them up. You can utilize them on phase 3, which is going to be handy to you because you'll want, if you want to speed up phase 3 a little bit, have more ammo on phase 3 for the boss. Because the boss, I believe the phase 3 is the easiest time to damage the boss. It's phase 2 that's the nightmare, just because it's stuck on this bridge thing. It's just awkward. Phase 3, you have the bridge to do damage to the boss, and the boss is actually more aggressive, which is good because it means you can actually do some DPS to the boss without the boss hiding every 2 seconds. So any bricks up here you save, but bricks down there you go and get, because on phase 3 you're not going to go down there at all really, because there's too many waves of enemies, there's too much stuff going on for you to even go down there. So just make sure that, because you should have plenty of bricks. Like I said, if you use an exotic primary, you're going to get more bricks. You can see I'm noticeably getting more bricks because of that. If I wasn't using an exotic primary, say I was using Galahorn with a standard legendary, I wouldn't get half as much ammo. But if it was double primary heavy, I would still get plenty, but not as much as this. Use our next super. Notice what I've done though. I've farmed up a super off the unstoppable, so I can get more damage in. This super is a little bit better. We're gonna actually retreat though, because there's wave of enemies. What you need to realise is the more damage you do, you might get 2 waves rather than 1. So that's double the thrall. That's double the cursed. And stuff like that. So you've got to, as I say, always think about when you've done your damage, what you're going to be coming down to, whether the cursed and stuff. Because if the cursed explode on you as you run down the hill, that can be a death. We'll try and do some heavy, but I wasn't confident. Just so the boss was going to do the arc attack. Another wave of enemies as well, so we can't be doing deep. As I say, you've literally got 1 shot in you, 1 to 2 shots, and then you've got to re-pick a different angle with the boss. You can't do continual damage on phase 2. It's only on phase 3 that you can really do that properly, which is why I haven't used much heavy up until now on the boss. It's mainly been nades and super. We've spammed a couple of supers on this boss. You can see how well Ogma's working as well. Because even with the Omolon fluid dynamics, you're getting that quicker reload half of the mag or whatever, which you're going to do anyway. So like, look, I'm going to break shield reload. So it's good for that as well. You get my reload out of the way, I can re-peek another angle. It's taking down the shield quick. It's got boss spec in it. I put boss spec on it just so that it's taking down the shield quicker. And turnabout should be proccing right now. It would be the perfect weapon for this if it did. But it isn't proccing because, as I say, the shield's bugged on this boss. Perks aren't working. We're using focused breathing there to get our next dodge look. So we literally just used our grenade and we've almost got it back. So as I say, it's pretty decent this. for neutral game. I would call this as a more of a neutral build. It's not hyper Pacific. That's another wave of enemies as well. If you want as well, it's a little difficult to do at times. I mean, I didn't have Elemental Ordnance on. I maybe should have had that on instead of melee Wellmaker, but for every ad phase, try and get a well, and then you're that much closer to your next super. So you can sort of rely more on your super doing the damage on phase 1 and 2, as opposed to any, heavy, because it's just a bit more dangerous doing linear shots. Sustained damage, because you can overcommit, and when you do overcommit to damage, that's where you'll get your deaths. It won't be the run itself that's killing you, it's this section here. But yeah, when you run away, the boss will sit in your pulse, because the boss will just beam where your last known position was. While that's happening, is your pulse is doing what you want it to do. That's why I sort of zoom off a little bit. And it procs focus breathing as well. So as I say, I'm trying to simulate a little bit what it was like with Titan for grenade spam. But obviously, it's nowhere near in terms of how many you're getting out. Right, but not everyone plays Titan, so we need to understand that. Obviously, more and more people are. I believe that because Solar 3.0 was a huge success for Titans, and Arc 3.0 was a success. Stasis not so much, but contrary to belief, Behemoth's actually very good. It's a very good super. It's a very good. Well, I don't know if it's as good as Revenant, and it's definitely not Warlock. I think Warlock takes the king of stasis in my books for PvE, but that's why so many people. I would like to see the stats on it now, how many Titan mains there are, because even on YouTube you can just see the amount of runs of it, not just Nightfalls but dungeons, raids. There's a hell of a lot of people playing Titan at the minute, because there's a lot to. Even Void 3.0 was very good on that was actually one of my favorites. So I love Sentinel. But what makes Sentinel work is the Heart of Inmost Light. And this is the problem where people are calling for nerfs on Titan, but let's not nerf the exotic. If you're going to nerf something, which I don't want them to nerf Storm yet. I know eventually they will need to, but you can let it go on a little longer before Lightfall and then hit them a little bit. But just tune them. Don't nerf them to where they're not usable. Because may I remind you, Storm Grenades have been out a long time. No one used them until now, right? It's literally been 2-3 months we're using them. That ain't that long in the grand scheme of things, as opposed to how long they've been out. So let's have it go on for another few months. Why not? Because as I said, people haven't been using Storm Grenades. They were a terrible. Well, they weren't terrible. Like, this is before Arc 3.0. They weren't terrible. They sort of had a place, but Pulse Grenade was obviously far superior, and boss is close to the final phase. There's no more waves of enemies, notice, so eventually they stop coming out on phase 2. It's when the boss gets close to a third damage, I would say. We've got another super. I wasn't sure to use it or not. I think I ended up using it. It's probably the right call, because I wouldn't be using my super anyways on anything on phase 3 at the start of it, because there's a lot of cursed, and you cannot super a bunch of cursed for all. You will definitely die to that. So if you've still got super the boss, because the boss is super tanky, right? Like even 5 to 10% is a good chunk of the boss's health. Should have took down the solar shield first, but that's alright. Does enough damage for us. See the stun damage. Sometimes when you stun the boss like that, it stops the arc attack, which is nice. Try and get a pulse nade down there quickly, because that's going to do some damage to a lot of the ads and any knights that are coming out, stuff like that. So now obviously phase 3, it's the strat of just playing from here, waiting for the cursed. You're not focusing the boss at all. It's obviously the two arc knights and all the cursed. They're delayed. Eventually the cursed start coming out. You can see they're starting to come out the door. So they don't initially come out they slowly make their way up. But just obviously shoot to the left of the stairs. Just keep an eye on it. The boss cannot hit you. It's impossible from where I'm standing here. So it's a case of you waiting for these arc boomer knights. That's both knights taken care of. There's a bunch of cursed here. Cursed pushes me and jump off. Yeah, we're just taking down with the bow. I use the bow rather than the pulse because the bow's just going to one-shot them, whereas the pulse is going to be a bit of sustained fire. That's the beauty of bows, though. That's why I've always said they are the best PvE primary in the game, because it promotes a playstyle of you dealing damage and not getting hit. You try and play the same with a scout rifle and stuff. It just isn't the same. You can't strafe shoot with a scout like sort of, oh, I'll do one shot, hide. One shot, hide. Because scouts aren't designed to reuse like that. Or auto rifle, try it with the auto. The auto, you've got to stand in position, do your damage. Right? Now that's fine with like an exotic primary like Sweet Business, because you'll stagger that ad. Yeah, or even the Storm Silver, you'll stagger the ad, so you'll be dealing damage and staggering them, stopping them from hitting you. But like a standard auto or a standard pulse, you're going to take a lot of damage when you're dealing it. Whereas with a bow, you quickly get your damage out, strafe shoot, you want to avoid all the enemy pattern of their attack. This is true for like, especially arc fall and the arc traces. You can avoid all that stuff because you're doing your strafe with your bow, your damage. And they don't have range drop off like a scout does. They do have some drop off in terms of accuracy. Accuracy is the range drop off stat, which I've spoke about in the past. You want a high accuracy bow, really. Obviously we're using Wish Ender, so you can't influence the stats at all that way. But it's that type of bow anyways, where I believe it's got a high accuracy. Try and get this curse first. The Arc Knight's pushing. Sometimes they will when there's less ads. But my focus is the curse. I don't want any cursed ruining the run. And then once this phase is done, it's just obviously you and the boss, so you can just have fun. Like, look at our linear. As I said, with this run, you need to use a bit more heavy. That's why we've saved bricks. We've got bricks up top for when we needed it, really. I'm not sure where this Arc Knight is going to strafe to right. It's okay. So once you've dealt with all the ads, you can then, as I say, relatively go in with your damage. And you see how more noticeably the boss has been on phase 3. Far easier to DPS. You can get caught by the attack a little bit. You just need to keep an eye on your HP. But we'll just do some linear shots. We're going to finish the boss in tradition with the super, because that's what the whole basis of the video has been about, is the super and the setup. So we'll kill the boss with that. Just take down shield first. I know that, as I said, the super's probably doing around 10% damage if you get all your combos to the boss, which can be difficult at times. But that was a solo GM on this. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you.